Aloha nerds and welcome back to another episode of the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction. On this show I watch movies that I like and react from the gut. So, I've recently revisited I wouldn't call it a childhood favorite, but when I was a kid and when I saw it, it really affected me. The film End of Days, directed by Peter Hyams, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Gabriel Byrne, and Robin Tuney. Really good flick. I have to say that I remember at the time. I mean, I was only a kid when it came out. It was 1999. I was about 10 years old when I saw it. It came out in 1999, meaning it would be on television a year later. So that was how I saw it. And basically, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger versus the devil. For those of you not aware of what Arnold really is, when I was growing up, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the hero. He was the Terminator. He was the biggest deal on the planet, and famous for fighting the Predator, being the Terminator, being True Lies and all that stuff. Here's an actor who started off in bodybuilding and weightlifting, and he became Mr. Universe. And he had a goal. One thing I have to admire about Arnold Schwarzenegger is recently watching interviews with him and everything is that he had a goal, he had a vision for himself, and he didn't let anything stop him. I think what a lot of people go through, certainly what I've gone through in my life, and certainly across time, people have these issues. But I think a lot of people have dreams, and sometimes reality is a little too hard for them, and they kind of crack, they kind of buckle, they kind of become a servant to reality and trying to just make ends meet. But for those who can, and for those who truly have the will and the drive, making that dream happen is all about perseverance. And he persevered. He came from Austria. He had to learn English. He was learning English while taking acting classes, while bodybuilding and doing all this stuff. He had a vision of himself as a superstar, and he made that vision happen. That having a vision for yourself is such a crucial part of making your life however it is that you want it to be. And I thought it was really amazing to think about all that watching it now. Because at the time, watching it as a young kid, this is oh my god, it's a really dark movie with Arnold in it. I mean, Terminator's a pretty dark movie, but Arnold does not have the darkest character. Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator films is a very no, I mean, he's just the killer robot in the first Terminator, and then he's a killer robot that grows a conscience in the second Terminator. But especially at the time in the 90s was when Arnold's career was shifting more toward being family friendly. He started off with the hard R action. He really, loved that fun, light action, but still serious type of movie. Commando was one attempt, but I think Predator really. And then Conan the Barbarian is one of my favorite Arnold films. I'll definitely be doing a video on that one. But End of Days was such a left turn, it felt, for Arnold, because this time he was playing a character with a lot of baggage. And I won't say that, this is his best performance. I think I think there's a number of movies that are his best performance. But it was really amazing to see how he nails certain moments. Basically, again, this movie is about Arnold Schwarzenegger versus the devil. So whatever your concepts of those two things are, that's what this movie's about. It's really dark. It's really creepy. Gabriel Byrne, who is from The Usual Suspects, he's most recently that I saw was in Maniac and Hereditary. Maniac, great show. Jonah Hill, Emma Stone, Cruella. Gabriel Byrne is a regular guy possessed by the devil, and he's on a mission to find this woman who was pre-selected by his followers, Satan's followers, to be the mother of the Antichrist. So Gabriel Byrne's looking for the future mother of the Antichrist. He knows who she is. He just needs to get to her. And meanwhile, Arnold Schwarzenegger is this sort of special ops, sort of response team guy who goes out and protects who goes out and protects VIPs. And in fact, post possession, one of the first people we see Arnold save is Gabriel Byrne. So we got a really sort of interesting dynamic here You know, when you have a hero that is a tank like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you do need a villain who has if he's not going to be bigger than Arnold. What I like is in the commentary, the director talks about choosing Gabriel Byrne because he had a sensual quality about him that a lot of women were very attracted to. In this movie, there's a lot of sexuality. Gabriel Byrne is basically feeling up or touching every woman he meets in this movie. And one funny little tidbit from the commentaries, the director talks about so many women wanted to be in the movie because of Gabriel Byrne. They wanted him to do the things that he does to women in this movie because it was going to be Gabriel Byrne. And I was just like, wow, that's awesome. That's interesting. And then you hear interviews with Gabriel Byrne. It's like, yeah, well, I just wanted to have an interesting part, you know. Damn, you know. So Robin Tuney plays the special lady selected for Gabriel Byrne. And there's these religious factions who are trying to kill Robin Tuney. Arnold Schwarzenegger gets in the middle of that. And that's essentially what joins them in the movie. And then at a certain point, it's very clear that Gabriel Byrne is pursuing her with his own religious followers. And throughout the movie, we're kind of just peeling back the layers of what's going on here. And we kind of get the answers as they're needed. It's this very interesting unraveling mystery about why all of these events are happening. It's tons of action. Like, if you want action scenes, there's tons of action. I don't think the action is most of the action's pretty dang solid. I think there's one stunt that's pretty ridiculous where Arnold is hanging off of a cord or a wire or something like that. And you know, it's interesting to look at. I think at the time it was probably like, oh, that's really surprising. But definitely over time, I'm like, okay, you know, that's okay. He's hanging from a wire and he's firing guns. I'm like, 90s gimmick action, you know. But on the whole, the action's very cool. The best action, I think, really is related to the visual effects and special effects. You know, Peter Hyams came up with some really cool visuals. I mean, this movie is taken from the script, but Peter Hyams' approach to the visual of the devil and what he looks like. At first, the devil is this invisible force that we kind of just see moving past things and affecting things, but people can't see exactly what it is. And then once it absorbs into Gabriel Byrne and takes over his body, then we essentially see Gabriel Byrne making things happen. I think up front, once Gabriel Byrne gets possessed, the first thing he does is finds a very attractive woman sitting at a table with her husband and goes for a kiss, gropes her, and then walks out, cool as hell. The woman is very elated and happy about it, and she's just looking at him wanting more. And then as soon as he exits the building, the whole thing explodes. And they do a really cool effect that holds up for the most part, where the flame kind of blows around Gabriel Byrne and doesn't hurt him. You know, it's a simple kind of, well, not simple, but it's a kind of an overlay effect where you film the actor coming out the door. You kind of keep the camera in the same spot where the explosion happens, and then the explosion happens. So that there's right up front, there's very good technical qualities to this movie, where by the end, when it really is the devil versus Arnold Schwarzenegger, because we have this whole buildup where Gabriel Byrne is becoming more and more demonic and doing greater and greater horrific things, that the finale where Arnold is really versus the devil, it's really Arnold versus the devil, and you're seeing and they're inside this church, and the church is exploding this way and that way, and the effects are fantastic. Like, watching it is very thrilling, and because of the emotions of the movie as well, very emotionally effective. That even though it ends with us seeing this kind of demon, the devil, that's not Gabriel Byrne, it does not take you out. Well, spoiler alert there. It doesn't take you out of the movie. You know, he's possessed, but it's the devil. The devil reveals himself. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. This movie's 23 years old. Sorry. But anyway, when we actually see the devil, it's not a jarring thing, and actually the design work is very cool. It's not too inconsistent with things you may have seen in Constantine with Keanu Reeves. But the ending certainly very dramatic, and what I was impressed with was that the final destruction sequence of the church was actually partially made from miniatures. So we have Arnold standing in the middle of a real church, and they've made a miniature to the exact scale but smaller, and filmed that separately. But they basically found the correct angles and the correct lenses and all that stuff, so that when they composited the effect, it really looked real. My favorite effect in the whole thing is actually, well, there's two. Is one where all the church benches blow up at the same time, or they kind of blow in a cascading motion. And that was such a cool, visceral effect. I was just like, Jesus, this is 1999, but the effects are still solid. I think even The Matrix has some effects that are like, okay, you're seeing just the edge of what CG can do, and will improve in those areas later. But I think End of Days, from a special effects action point of view, really holds up. Even better, I would say, than Predator 1 in many ways, just because there was a perfect control of what should be happening in the action. So that's just sort of overall my gut reaction to the movie. I think if you want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Mr. Universe, Terminator versus the Devil, definitely check this out. Totally solid action time. Yeah, and now that being said, I kind of want to get a little bit nerdy and just do a couple little shout outs about this movie. Some of the other people that star in this movie. Well, Gabriel Byrne, first of all, he's kind of a favorite of mine just because I know him really from Usual Suspects. I love Usual Suspects. If you haven't seen that, Kevin Pollak, who plays Arnold Schwarzenegger's partner and best friend, he's also in Usual Suspects. He always kind of plays as the sardonic, sarcastic, sort of funny, offbeat guy, but he still has a very real quality to him, and his performances are always solid. And I think definitely in this movie, although I'd say he gets a little less to say than maybe Usual Suspects, his moments are really strong. And Kevin Pollak also, by the way, Kevin Pollak is in House Arrest. That was a movie that I loved as a kid. I don't know if I'd still love it now, but as a kid I was like, that was a very entertaining film. It's kind of like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, these kid adventure flicks stuck inside a single location. Then I really want to shout out Miriam Margolyes. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name, but she's a fantastic actress from Romeo and Juliet. She plays the nanny for Juliet. She's in a lot of movies, a lot of roles. I can't pinpoint them all, but she was in Harry Potter 2 and Happy Feet, for just a couple. And what a fantastic actress! Really, hats off to her. She plays Robin Tuney's stepmother in this movie, and she is part of the religious conspiracy to get the anointed Antichrist mother to hook up with Gabriel Byrne. So she's being the stepmother to Robin Tuney. And she's basically, one of the things that Robin Tuney's going through in this movie is that all through her life she's had visions of this guy coming to her and taking her and essentially making love with her. But she's had these visions her entire life. And not only that, but when she's out in the real world, she has what she thinks are visions of like demonic people or strange, hellish imagery that, the stepmother, Miriam Margolyes, I'm sorry, but her stepmother keeps telling her, no, this is just, it's in your head, you're fine, call your therapist, who is also part of this team. He'll tell you you're fine. It's normal to see stuff, especially specifically demonic stuff. So she's living her whole life with this kind of blinder on, but this blinder set on by people around her. So that to me is very interesting. And what I think is also double interesting is Arnold Schwarzenegger's introduction. When we meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, it is unlike any time we've met him in another movie. I mean, I'm so used to, the beginning of Terminator 2 or the beginning of Kindergarten Cop or True Lies, where we're introduced to the gruffest, toughest, best one-liner guy. But when this movie starts off, spoiler alert, because this is the introduction to his character. This sets the tone for how you should see him for the rest of the movie. When he's introduced, we get this long shot sort of showing all the sort of tabletop surfaces of his house, his apartment, and all we see are pills and empty bottles. And when it finally gets to Arnold, we see him in this sort of sweaty, hair hanging over his head. He looks greasy, he's not taking care of himself, and he takes a drink and he puts a gun to his head. And just when he's about to pull the trigger, there's a knock on the door, and he kind of snaps out of it, puts the gun down, and then the door opens and Kevin Pollak, his partner slash buddy, comes in. And that sets the tone for how you should see his character for the rest of the movie, because this event is never referred to. It's never referred to, but it creates a subtext for the character. Because when Kevin Pollak comes in, he tells him, "Hey, what are you doing? Having fun with yourself?" Arnold is in the dark in a messy home, and he's not taking care of himself. He's not taking care of his place. And, Kevin Pollak is just kind of lightly referring to his lifestyle, but he's just really trying to shake him out of it and tell him, "Hey, come on, let's go to work. Come on. Get out of your mess. Get out of your funk in your head. Come on, let's go." And in the very next scene, when, a crazy homeless person is shooting at Gabriel Byrne, and Arnold gets in the way and he gets shot, he goes down, and it's this kind of weird, again, not stated, but this creates the subtext that Arnold was maybe wanting to be shot. Not only was he trying to save this person's life, he's been waiting to die because there's something miserable wrong with him. And again, we never refer to this moment later, but mega spoiler alert here. When we get to the end of the movie, Arnold, he destroys Gabriel Byrne, the vessel of the devil, thus unleashing the devil itself, and the devil, in response, takes over Arnold's body. And Arnold then becomes the one trying to impregnate Robin Tuney. And this makes this final sequence really haunting, because his whole, even though he's suicidal, we see he is a good, caring person. He tries to save people whenever he can, and especially this woman. He's been trying to save her the entire movie, doing everything he can to happen, and now he is in the embodiment, the physical embodiment of the thing that's trying to hurt her. And you live long enough to see yourself become a hero or villain sometimes, because the devil will just take over your body. But Robin Tuney, we get the movie thing when someone is possessed or mind controlled, just appeal to their emotions and they'll snap out of it. So Robin Tuney is like, "Come on, no, remember me, I'm a person, and we're cool with each other, and blah blah blah." But it works, and it gets him to snap out of it just long enough, that there's this statue with a sword that had fallen over because of all the destruction the devil caused. They're inside the church at this point. Inside the church, the devil's blowing the place up, and a statue with a giant sword fell over, and Arnold sees the sword, and he jumps for it. Without thinking too long, he jumps for it. And that really got me as a kid too. I mean, of course, the Terminator 2 demise was one thing and very emotional and will live with me forever. But I remember thinking as a kid, this was such a dark, the motivation for it, and the fact that it was literally a suicide, but also it's a murder-suicide. He's trying to kill the devil, or prevent the devil from committing this awful evil. And it's just the fact that he starts off the movie there, and then he finds reasons to live throughout the movie, and he finds, I think in that moment he did want to live, because when he looks at the sword, there's kind of just the briefest hesitation, and then he jumps and he goes for it, and he does defeat the devil. But it's just this sad tragedy where the character wanted something at the beginning, at the end he got it, but it was not the way he had initially wanted it. But it did actually do some good. If he had just killed himself alone in that apartment, he would have never saved Robin Tuney. Never. And very much, when you talk about religious concepts and everything happens for a reason, everything happens for a reason is a theme in this movie. It always is in any movie that touches on religion. But in this movie, we get the beautiful layout of, prior to this, when there's a break in the attempts to save Robin Tuney, where Arnold is back in his apartment and the devil visits him. Gabriel Byrne visits him and shows him a vision of the past, and it shows that, some time ago, Arnold had a wife and a daughter, and they were alone in the house, and some guys who were seeking revenge for him killing or putting a criminal away that they knew, they came in looking for him, and they killed the wife and kid instead. And this has just been this source of both, sadness and guilt that's been weighing on him this whole time. And so not only do we get the unraveling of why is this religious action happening, why are all these people involved, but we're also getting the unraveling of why Arnold is like this and what it means to him to make these choices. And that stuff's very powerful. I think and again, it's, some parts of it are subtext, and you have to sort of read into it and understand why the devil is saying certain things, because it's in the movie, but it's visual, and you have to watch it that way. One thing that is nice is that, like I said, Robin Tuney's been going her whole life seeing these visions, and has been told her whole life that she's just, imagining it, but she's fine. You're not a crazy person, and yet you're clearly having crazy person experiences. It's such a confusing thing to put someone through. But there's one moment, and again, this is one of those impressive visual effects, special and visual. Visual effects these days typically means computer animated, but special effects technically means it was physically achieved. So this was a combination of both effects, in which when Arnold and Robin Tuney are together for one scene, Robin Tuney picks up an apple, a sliced open apple, and when she looks at the core of the apple, there's these maggots crawling around, but they're maggots that look like people. And this is very creepy, disturbing mishmash image. Already maggots would be a disgusting visual, but the fact that they kind of look like people suffering, very hellish. And she freaks out and throws the apple, and she looks at him, and then she looks at Arnold, self-conscious, and kind of acts like, and then he's like, I saw it too. And so for the first time, her character gets some resolution, gets some acknowledgement of what she's going through. And I feel like, as much as this movie is about sort of the action and the themes, it is about characters who have these certain trajectories and these certain lives. Arnold Schwarzenegger has been through basically the worst of the worst, losing your entire family and being the last one, and having yourself essentially in a suicidal path, a suicidal self-destructive path. And Robin Tuney is on the other side, where she's actually lived a very good and full life, but she's always been haunted by something that she can't quite understand, and no one around her will acknowledge it and will let her say that this is real. And sometimes crazy people are just crazy people, but other times it's like there's a manipulation happening. You're being manipulated for a reason, and your instinct knows it. Your instinct just knows you're right. And she's being controlled, and she's basically slowly breaking free from a fun-filled but controlled life. And unfortunately, in her case, breaking free means seeing the real world and seeing horror and seeing the terror that's truly brewing underneath her feet at all times. but it's the confrontation of the terror. She must confront the real terror that's been hidden from her, and Arnold must confront the terror that he keeps trying to walk into with the intention of killing himself, but for some reason fate keeps him alive. But all this sort of happens for a reason. Arnold is a blatant character who just hides his pain, and so is she. She's a blatant person who is hiding her secret. But they meet in the middle with their pains and their secrets, and that sort of union gives them both a sense of completion. You know, he just needs to save someone. He needs to save someone in order to feel redeemed for the lives he could not save that were his own family. And she needs to be around someone who's honest with her and not trying to control her. You know, she can keep living the free life, but she can't be around these controlling people that are manipulating her. Because ultimately, then you're still in the bad life, even if you don't think you are. You know, and then that bad life reveals itself. You know, in essentially the second act of the movie, the bad life that was waiting for her reveals itself because of all these people's lies and manipulation. So, yeah, I think this is a really powerful movie on multiple levels. If you're looking to make movies, I do highly recommend picking up the DVD, watching the commentary. Very, very informative. One thing I really took from the commentary, from this one and from many others, is that the casting. You know, the casting, if it works for you, it's because these people were right for the roles. And 9 times out of 10, the reason a movie works, as this director says and many others, is because the casting is correct. The actors who are in the roles must feel right for those parts. And not to say, you know, not every movie is going to work for everyone. But certainly in the case of End of Days, we have a very dark, creepy, strange movie. And when you have the driver of the vehicle being Arnold, or, well, you know, the man at the helm is Peter Hyams. But in terms of the audience point of view, Arnold's the driver of this vehicle. He's the main character. But you have him surrounded by Kevin Pollak, who's a fantastic counterpoint. His sardonic sort of quality bounces off very well with Arnold's ironic quality. Arnold is very ironic in a humorous way. But Arnold in this movie is playing a very dark, miserable character. But that their meshing really works. They do feel like friends who are lived in and know each other. And, you know, part of that also behind the scenes, Robin Tuney talks about working with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And she talks about how he was very personable. You know, even though it is this intimidating star, he was very personable and very easy to work with, and would give as much as he could as an actor to make sure you got what you needed to react from him, and he would always be willing to go. And Peter Hyams would also keep saying, in scenes where they would beat up Arnold, or scenes where Arnold had to do something dramatic, Peter Hyams would keep saying Arnold was always down to go 100% and completely commit to a direction or toward just achieving something to its fullest effect. So much so that there's a scene where Arnold's crucified, and what a haunting visual that was for me, because that was essentially my introduction to crucifixions. Arnold was crucified, and he really is hanging up on a cross 30 to 40 feet above the ground. And even if you're in harnesses and all that, that's an uncomfortable position to be in for a long time, even if it's fake, you know, and that's some commitment right there. So it's really him. It's not a stunt double being hoisted up or any of that stuff. Stuff like that. Being willing to commit to what you're doing is everything when it comes to making a movie that's effective. Doesn't mean every movie is going to be enjoyable or good, but, you know, that really matters. So, you know, hats off to really strong casting. Really great cast. And Miriam Margolyes, I can't remember if I said this, she fights Arnold. When Arnold is taking Robin Tuney around trying to help her figure out what's going on and save her from people, they meet the stepmother, and she fights Arnold, and she beats him. She kicks his ass. She chucks him around 20 feet. It's a really fun, exciting sequence, especially, again, growing up with Terminator as my religion, it was incredibly powerful and funny to see this woman who I know from Romeo and Juliet as the very sweet nanny, now being this crazy, angry woman who's capable of chucking Arnold across a room and not only that, shoving a piano into him and trying to crush him to death with it. That was something. That was nuts. This movie is filled with lots of fun, crazy, dark visuals. If you're in the mood for dark, crazy, creepy movies, End of Days is your way to go. I really appreciate the filmmaking in this movie. Hats off to Peter Hyams, who also directed Time Cop, The Presidio, and The Musketeer. I have not seen any of those movies, but I know a lot of people love Time Cop. So if you love that movie and you want to see a dark Arnold movie with Arnold versus the devil, you're in for a treat. Go see End of Days. So, yeah, that's what I gotta say. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, remember, if you like what you see, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment. Thank you very much, and aloha, nerds.